Hi, this is Shayla with Whole Motherhood, and you are listening to Moms Learning with Moms. And just to give some background on this is just a channel to help mothers who have different situations and interests and maybe struggles. And it's just a way for us to kind of connect and get some help and maybe some ideas of things that could help. So today we have Rachael with us, and Rachael is really an interesting and fun and just her life is could be a book, and she writes books. So but we're gonna kind of go into she is an author. She's published quite a few books. My girls love them, and I've read them, and I love them, and it's just really she's got some different genres even that she writes. It's kind of fun. So she also has different hobbies. She is a lives on kind of a homestead, isn't it, Rachael?
I would say,
It
yeah,
was
hobby farm, homestead.
and it's beautiful, and she just keeps that up too. So we're just gonna kind of turn it over to Rachael and have her tell us kind of how she got to where she was, kind of her beginnings with her husband and her husband Jack and her, and how they kind of started what they have.
Jack and I met when we were teenagers. He was 15, I was 16, because I robbed the cradle. I'm a year and 4 months older than him. And we knew each other for a long time. We were good friends. We did a lot of stuff together through mutual friends. And then we both decided to serve missions. I went to Canada, he went to Mexico. And then shortly after returning, we were married. We were just, why wait? Worked out well for us. And then we were in Nebraska, where I finished up my degree in animal science at the University of Nebraska. And then we moved to Iowa so that Jack could get his degree in aerospace engineering. And that's where we bought our first homestead. It was like 7 acres. The house was built in 1900, and it was mostly so that I could keep my horse. So Jack has always been very kind in letting me indulge my animal fascination. So that one was our first fixer-upper.
And that was in Iowa, you said?
Yes,
Okay.
it was north of Des Moines. You just kept going, and the towns kept getting smaller and smaller the more north you went. So we bought that one. It was really rough. I don't think we would have bought it if we had kids at the time. We had been trying to have kids for a few years, and we just hadn't been able to. So we decided we'd go ahead and go for that house because it was just the two of us. We could, live however, whichever room we were fixing up, we just wouldn't live in. And then right as we closed on that house, I found out I was pregnant with Evelyn. And so she has always lived in these fixer-upper kind of houses with us as we've been moving along. And then, yeah, shortly after, we had another few kids, and they just kept coming until we were done. We moved to Iowa after our third daughter was, or Indiana, excuse me, after our third daughter was born. Jack had finished school, and this was the closest thing to Midwest. They say it's Midwest here. It's a little east to me as a Midwesterner from Nebraska, but it feels Midwestern. And so the other options were, Florida or California or Washington State. And those were just, we would have taken it if it was meant to be, but we're happy we ended up in Indiana.
Mm. And that's with his work, is the
Yes.
aerospace engineering, is that right?
Yep. There's a lot of companies on the coasts, but there have been more popping up, or at least I've noticed, that are more central. So that's how we ended up here in Indiana job.
So when did your like writing hobby start? Like was this a childhood thing that you just were always writing, or was that
No, and I think sometimes that gives me imposter syndrome. Is I remember trying to write books a few times when I was younger, but it was a half-hearted effort. I didn't finish them. I mean, writing a book is a big deal, especially when you're first starting. And so I sometimes feel like a charlatan where everyone else is like, oh yeah, I've wanted to be this forever. And I've always enjoyed reading. I did well in my English classes. And I think my first sincere effort was when I had Claire. I was working full time and I was the breadwinner while Jack was at school. I mean, he worked part time, but I had the insurance, I was making the money, and I was so desperate not to go back to work because I wanted to be able to raise my kids that I was like, well, maybe I'll be one of those lucky ones that, you know, gets the movie deal right out of the gate. And I did not. I didn't pick up an agent, and it was before self-publishing was really a thing.
Hmm.
So that's the first effort that I made. And I think I still have the manuscript. It's not good. But, like any effort, your first few efforts aren't great. That's how you learn if you put the work in. And then the second time, I was thinking about this today too, Shayla. I was looking through the questions that a lot of my writing has been tied to motherhood. It's not necessarily about motherhood, but it's been tied to it closely. And so my second effort where I started publishing was after Catherine was born, and we were trying to have another baby, and I had 2 miscarriages right in a row. And I just wanted to feel like successful outside of being a mother, if that makes sense. I
Yeah.
wanted to know that, you know, like my self-worth wasn't based on motherhood, which it's not. I mean, it's a huge blessing, but I would be a complete whole person regardless of the number of children I was able to have. And so, yes, I started writing, and that's the first book that I wrote. I've since taken it down and republished it under another name, and I'm learning how to do pen names and keep genres, within the same pen name, and just continuing since then to write. So
And so that was after how many children that you really got into the writing?
3.
3. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. And there's been years where it's kind of ebbed and flowed, where I mean, it just works out. Some years I'm just able to write more, some years not so much. And that's what I love about it, is that it's always there. I can pick it up and leave it as I need. And I mean, right now that the kids are in school, I do have these periods of quiet time. And what's been really great too is that with Jack's work schedule since COVID, he works at home, and I love that. And he's pretty flexible, and so he's been devoting a chunk of his lunch hour to allowing me to do that. So
Hmm.
instead of stressing at the end of the day or getting up earlier than I probably should to try to write without being interrupted, he takes the 2 younger boys and they, go weed the garden or pickle something, and I get to write. So,
That's a double win.
it is. It really is.
Actually, this is a writing question I have. So, as you write your books, like, are you always the heroine in your books? Like, as you're writing, is your mind like, I am this person?
That's an interesting question. I would say I see pieces of myself in the heroines or in their lives. And I think I take a lot of notes when I hear something in a movie, or Jack and I have had a particularly deep discussion, or I've read a book that I enjoy. So I pick up pieces here and there. It's not like I think that I'm not as flawed, I'm not as awesome as every heroine that I write, but I think I do see pieces of myself in there.
Well, and you always post little like clips of what your kids say. Like, that's another question.
Snippets on Facebook.
Oh, when you post what your kids say, I'm wondering if those lines often get into your book.
They do sometimes, especially when there's kids in the books. But I've actually started writing middle grade mysteries. So I think I see a lot of my kids in that. I have slews and slews of things they've said that just make me laugh, and so some of that does make it into books. If nothing else, it's a good memory on Facebook.
Your kids are like witty as they're coming out
Yeah.
with things to say.
Yeah. Sometimes it's witty, sometimes it's snide or funny. It is. I mean, they're snarky and it is. And that's what I try to remember to laugh about the stuff they say. So it is. I pick and choose what I want to write. So,
And amidst all of this, you've maintained homesteads. Like, how many have you had throughout the years?
we've had 3 now, and we're casually looking for more land. Every time we've been able to move up a little bit, and it just allows for more independence. And so our first one in Iowa, like I said, it was 7 acres, and it we had horses. I had my horse that I've had him since he was 2, and he just turned 26 this year. And
Wow.
then yes, he's an old man. And then we had chickens, and that's pretty much all we had. We had a little garden, but we were just so busy working and with little kids, and Jack had out of state interns and stuff, so internships. So we were real busy. And then when we moved to Indiana, we actually went down to 5 acres, and we kept the horses, but then we still had chickens, and that's where we got more seriously into planting orchards and gardens and stuff, really tapping the maple trees. That was the first time we tried it there. And so once we moved here, we have about 12 acres, and it still feels tight for what I'd like. I mean, I could live on 300 acres and have no neighbors and be happy. But, it's allowed us to expand and to be more self-sufficient and to share it with others. That's what I love is, you plant 1 or 2 zucchini plants, and it's going to make enough for you and your neighbors. And yeah, a couple of hens they lay plenty of eggs for us and others. And so that's what I like about it.
That's perfect. How do you feel like this all, I mean, you talked about how you are a whole person without however many children you have, but there's got to be some sort of management thing that you're like you have 8 children, isn't that right?
Just 7. We have lucky
7.
7.
Okay.
One for every day of the week. we Yeah, and I mean, I think they just, having a large family, everyone's just kind of used to the what it takes, the work it takes to have a large family. And it again, it ebbs and flows. Like, over the summer, it's like our carpet's so cluttered from toys we can hardly see it because everybody's home making a mess. And right now it's just not that way. We've got a lot of kids out of the house and at school and stuff. But I mean, we have a lot of charts to help us keep track of whose turn it is to clean what room or do the dishes that day. And
Hmm.
but then when it comes to the other things, pickling, canning, picking peaches,
Hmm.
mowing, whatever, it really has helped that the kids are older. I mean, I don't think I was mowing when we've started letting our kids mow. So, I mean, they just take on those responsibilities, and sometimes we do things we don't like to do. Sometimes you get to do the job you want to do. And so, I don't know, it works out.
So when you guys are like at this current homestead, like I've seen you guys like grow mushrooms and like do you find these things and know what they are, or do you just kind of, I don't know, discover as you go?
Well, so I think what's been interesting about Jack and my relationship is that we're not opposite, but we have different interests. Like I will take care of the animals all day. I will milk the cows and wash the horses and clean the stalls and all that stuff. Whereas Jack, his strengths are definitely in plants. Like I have accidentally weeded out bushes, blueberry bushes we wanted to keep. And I was like, why is this so hard to get out? And then I was like, oh, that was the blueberry bush that Jack took. So I think that we discover a lot of stuff because our interests are different, and then it kind of overlaps. So one of Jack's favorite things to do is watch YouTube videos, and he just watches farmers or like us, similar smaller homesteads and what works for them. And So he finds things that he finds interesting, and then we do it together. I mean, some of the mushroom hunting we do, it's like morels and chanterelles, stuff like that are they're hard to cultivate
Hmm.
inside. And so that's a family activity usually where we have to leave the house and find them. But then he started growing others, like he had some blue oysters and I can't remember what other kind he had. Anyway, those ones you can cultivate in the house. And so he made a setup and, was able to grow them. And he made them that one year and we haven't had to do them since because it was so prolific. So, I mean, it's just different interests. And then we kind of share that interest once we find it.
So everything on your homestead, like what is there? Like the animals and
Yes. This is what we've learned is that the first thing you do when you move to a homestead is you plant your orchard. Because at the other two houses that we didn't plant our trees right away because they're expensive and time consuming to take care of. And so we'd plant them, and then it was like the year we move would be the first year we would be getting fruit, and then we'd move right before it was ripe. So this is our first year getting fruit, like really good crop of fruit from our fruit trees. So we have cherries, peaches, apples, nectarines, and
hmm.
pears. And we have pawpaws, which is the native Indiana banana. I haven't done anything yet, but and then we have a garden and it's got, the typical strawberries and tomatoes and corn and all the stuff we normally eat. And we have, right now we have 5 cows. 2 of them are our milk cows, and the 3 other are the offspring that go to the butcher. And then we have, yeah, and then we have chickens, and we have cats and dogs. I'd love to get more, but it's catching up with the fencing that the previous owner wasn't able to do, and managing the pastures to make sure there's enough for everyone. I'd love to get goats, maybe a pig or 2. So lots and lots of stuff.
Does I mean, you said Jack's interests are different, but does Jack like cringe when you're getting more animals at all, or is he?
Oh my gosh. No, he's usually the one to buy them for me. Found both of our milk cows, and they've both been really good cows for us. So he very much does support me and my interests. So I am grateful for that. We actually went and looked at puppies yesterday because we need a good farm dog. We have a dog, but she's a great pet. Like the fox will be out there chasing our chickens right in front of her and she will just not do anything. So she just doesn't get it. So she's great with kids. Everyone loves her, but she's just not a great
She's just
guardian.
not useful. Yeah.
No, she really isn't. Not other than, companionship.
Companion.
But
Oh, there.
yes, I mean, so he indulges stuff like that. But that's Kate's thing. Our daughter really loves dogs. She would love a puppy someday. And so we have been casually looking, and he instigated that. So
Hmm.
I'm grateful for that.
So do your kids have a hard time taking like seeing the animals get a little bit raised and then have to go to a butcher, or has that been hard at all?
uh, that's always an interesting question because it's not, I guess what I say is that I feel sad the day we take them, but I don't feel guilty. That's something that they have a great life on our farm. They are well looked after, they're named, they're loved, they get their treats. And then they have one bad day. And we always make sure to make as much use of them as we can. We make, clearly we feed ourselves, we share with friends and family, and we try to use as much of them as we can. So we'll get the bones back for the dog, and we've
Hmm.
used a few of their hides to make leather. So
Wow.
just the circle of life. We make dog food with the meat that we don't plan on eating, or cat food. And so, they serve their purpose and we're grateful for it.
I love that. I really love that. Yeah, let's go back to writing for a second. Your kids like watching you write or reading your books or
Like the middle grade book, we kind of wrote together. Like I did the bulk of the writing, but I wrote it and then we'd read a chapter together and then they'd suggest, what happened next or naming characters. And so that one was really fun. I'd like to continue with that series because it feels like a collaboration with the kids. The rest of the books, some of the older girls have read some of them, and I get feedback from them, which is kind of fun. And yeah, I mean, they know they've said prayers for me when I'm
oh,
on a deadline, and so it's really sweet. And as I'm learning how to balance being a mother and having that, I mean, I guess I would call it a career. It's been a blessing to have them know that it's important to me and that it's a part of who I am. It's just a creative endeavor that for whatever reason that it's part of me. And I was thinking too that all of the other things that I do, if we go on a bike ride or we go weed the garden or we go on a hike or, we go pick flowers out of the garden, that's something we do together because you can include the kids with it.
hmm.
Whereas writing is really one of the very few things that only I can do. I can't do it with them. I mean, they might sit on my lap or something, but in my head, I need to focus and do that writing. And so that is, I think, important for them to see too, that I am an individual. I am a wife and a mother, but I'm also still me. I didn't lose my identity when we became a family.
What is the process, Rachel, with getting self-published? Like, how do you exactly do that?
Well, there's, I mean, there's different routes you can take, and there's pluses and minuses to most of them. But the when you self-publish, the benefit is that you get to keep most of your royalties. It's not sent to your agent or your editor or your the publisher. So, but then the drawback is that it all then falls to you. So I have to find a cover designer. I have to write the book. I have to send it to the editor. I then have to upload it
Hmm.
and promote it, advertise. I do not love marketing, but I'm learning, and there's a lot of networking with fellow authors um, to promote and advertise and get feedback and stuff. So it's its own community. So I don't think it's particularly hard, but I mean, getting that book out there is its own challenge.
Hmm. So do you now have an agent or do you still just go with self-publishing?
No, it's called hybrid, where I've had a few publishers publish books. They're not currently available because usually with a publisher, they have the rights to the book for a certain amount of time. And then once it's up, they can either choose to continue it or return them. And so I had done a few small presses and they've returned it, which, the time was just up. And so I used that to republish it into something else. So, repurposing that work that you've already done.
Hmm.
And then, I mean, I'm not at all opposed to traditional publishing. I think there's merits to that too. I mean, you just can reach a wider audience because they have those resources available.
So can you just, I mean, would that be something that somebody just Googles is find me a
Yeah.
publisher and
Yeah. I mean, if you want to find a publisher, generally, if you're trying to go traditionally, generally you find an agent. So first you have to find someone who will represent your work and shop it out to a publisher. Um, and then that, it might take years and years to happen. And then they might have your book, your agent might love it, and they just don't find the publisher. It's just not the right time for that particular trope. It's just not a hot thing that they think they can sell. So it's not even necessarily a comment on your writing. It's just sometimes the timing is wrong.
hmm.
And that's what's great about self-publishing too, is that you don't have to wait that long time because You can, when you're ready, you publish it, or you can set up your own publishing schedule and you have control over all of that.
Is it hard to find a good editor?
Yes, I think there's different types of editors. There's like developmental editors, which would help you with the story arc or the flow, or they don't understand the conflict, something like that. So they help shape your story. And then there's um, line editing and copy editing. And like the copy editing is what you think of where you missed a period here, you need a quotation mark there, you used the wrong word, whatever. And
Hmm.
so it is, I mean, the person you're having edit has to understand your story and you have to work well together, but it's also like they need to give you feedback. If something doesn't make sense, they need to be okay, and you have to be comfortable enough with someone saying that they don't get it, they don't like it, and
Right.
that's just part of the creative process, is that not everyone is going to love everything that you do.
You can just tell me to mind my own business. I'm just curious. Like, is it a financial asset for you guys at all? The homesteading or the writing?
It is. The homesteading, I think it could be. I mean, we don't, it's kind of like, the homesteading, it is part of where we live. I mean, it's part of our mortgage. It's not costing us anything extra to do it. And then when we butcher a cow, we basically just charge the price of what it cost us in hay that year. So it covers the cost of hay, and it's still less expensive for our friends and family that we sell it to. So it feels like a win-win, that we're helping them and they're helping us. So I think I would love to someday have a homestead that we could have, you know, a you pick apple place or a pumpkin patch or something. I would love that, to let people come out and see what it's like, where your food comes from, what it's like to live on a farm. So someday we would love that. Writing, yes. I mean, I've been writing now for over a decade. And like I said, sometimes it was serious, sometimes it was more for my own um, sanity, I guess. And so the more serious I've gotten, the better it's become. I mean, it's just kind of a numbers game. Eventually, you're going to write so many books and become, people are going to recognize that you're out there, that it just becomes a financial blessing. And so I've been able to double my income for the last 4 years. So that it just keeps increasing as
Wow.
I understand how to do it and as I specialize and learn. I mean, it is, like I said, it's a career, and it's one that I can take at my own pace, which I really appreciate. And yeah, I mean, it helps us out.
That's exciting. That's
It
actually
is.
awesome. So do you have many lulls? Like, do you get frustrated with your writing? Is it just kind of like there's ebbs and flows a little bit?
No, I I know some people hit like writer's block, where they,
Okay.
sit down in that frustration of not knowing where the story's going. But that is a huge benefit to me of not doing this full time, is that, while I'm scrubbing out under the sink or I'm mopping, I can think about those things that I want to write. And so when I sit down, I hit the ground running.
Hmm.
So I don't have those. And I have lists and lists of books that I would write. I will never run out of ideas.
I have heard you say before, and I'm trying to remember. Oh, that Jack can predict your books, and that drives you crazy or something.
Yes, it does. I think I've gotten a little better about surprising him. That was something Agatha Christie, she had an older sister, and her sister said, "Write me something that I won't be able to guess the ending." And that's how we had Murder on the Orient Express
Oh my heck.
for her sister, for the same reason.
That's so funny. That's really funny. As like a finishing thing, is there anything that you want to add about just I guess I one of the things I think is really just really interesting and fun about you is that you have pursued these interests and you just kind of made this part of your life even with raising a family. And what would you say to other people just in pursuing those sort of dreams or ambitions.
Remind them that life is about balance, that, that it's not all or one or nothing. And there are times when um, something will take priority. Having a new baby, that takes priority, and that's most important. But also, when your kids are older, it's okay to put them in the front of the TV for half an hour so that you have time to pursue your endeavors, and you'll find ways to make it work. I think that that's the most important, is that, we recognize that we are who we are. And I think that we have those interests for a reason. And it's so easy to put them off in the name of, whatever. We're tired. So yeah, sometimes we need to rest, but sometimes we need to push through and pursue something that's important. Or maybe sometimes it is time to put the interests away for a little while so that you can enjoy having family. Because the kids grow so fast. That's what I'm just, I don't know, it just shocks me. I have a teenager this year, and it just feels like yesterday she was just born. So yeah, I think that it's all about finding that balance in life. And part of filling your well as a mother is being your own person, so that you can be a better mother to your kids. Because like when I have that time to write, or maybe it's going out and spending time with the horses or something and having a little quiet time, it makes it a lot easier to go back to the things that might seem like drudgery. I don't dread having to do it, because there is a break, and there's time to work, and there's time to enjoy life. So
Well, thank you, Rachel. This has been perfect. And as we close up, we're just going to encourage all of these people listening to just keep learning and pursue those interests. Go accomplish some dreams, and don't feel bad about it.
right. Yeah.